Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The session is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The session is about to begin. Please make sure to pick up your name tags on your way into the conference room. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The session is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second day of the Global Meeting of the Emerging Markets Forum, a conference jointly organized by the Policy Center for the New South and the Emerging Markets Forum. This year's edition takes place under the general theme of improving governance to tackle climate change, inequality, and global fragmentation. We will begin today's session by an introduction to the structure and main themes of the forum. Please welcome to the stage Harinder Kohli, Founding Director and Chief Executive at the Emerging Markets Forum. Harinder Kohli, the floor is yours.
Good morning and welcome again. Let me welcome you to the first full day of our forum. I hope all of you got some sleep after that lovely dinner and our opening sessions yesterday. I will take a few minutes to describe to you our program for the next 2 days so that you get a little bit of a sense how different sessions, 7 sessions, fit into each other and the ideas we had in structuring your program and the logic for them. If you have any urgent questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Since we're starting a little late, and that's always the case in starting the early morning sessions, it's not unusual. But if you have any urgent questions, I'll be very happy to answer them. But our next speakers are already waiting, so hopefully I can stay within the 10 days allocated for this particular intervention. We are holding this forum in very challenging times, a period where the world is going through a very, I would say, big threat of climate change. Really, that's the biggest issue of our generation, which the world has to fight together. And that's the underlying theme of our forum, climate change. And not only would we start the day after this session and Mr. Watanabe's remarks right after this particular small intervention by me, by talking about climate change and how emerging markets would meet their net zero objectives, financing needs. But we'll be talking about climate change almost in every session in the next 2 days. But in addition to climate change, we heard yesterday, for example, from Mr. Kuroda, the issue of fragmentation. We also heard from the opening panel the issue of wars. Ukraine war is just one of them. What is happening in the Middle East, and another example, but the other conflicts around the world. We'll hear later this morning from the Director General of WTO the issue of deglobalization. She is going to urge us to think about reglobalization like she talked to us in Paris last year. So that's the other issue, the issue of trade and what to do about it, because the emerging markets have gained so much in the last 60, 70 years from globalization. So the issue is what would happen with global value chains, world trade. So that's the other issue that we'll be talking about. But as Emerging Markets Forum, we have also been very concerned about the issue of what will happen to international monetary system. So there's a major session, a very important paper which is in front of us, and we'll be talking about that. The other issue which is on the table at the annual meetings of the World Bank and IMF, and this is an issue that we've been talking in our forum for a number of years, and that is the issue of the multilateral system. Is it really fit for purpose? Are the multilateral institutions doing enough, not only about issues of the past, which the emerging markets have faced, but more importantly, the issues they face today and they'll be facing in the future. And many heads of current and former of multilateral institutions, and we have some of them in this room today. Enrique Garcia, our co-chair, Satsuma, who will be chairing our session on reform of the multilateral system. They've been saying that there's a need for fundamental reform of multilateral institutions. And that's a major theme of this forum, and we have a session on that. And there's a report commissioned by the G20 chair, India, and we'll be discussing that. Mr. N.K. Singh, who was one of the co-chairs of the G20 independent group, he will be presenting his report to us, and we're very privileged to have that. And we have a big panel, actually, maybe too big, which Satsuma will be chairing. I think we'll be having very exciting discussion on it. We also will be releasing a report on one of the biggest long-term issues in addition to climate change, which emerging markets face, which is the issue of governance and how to build robust institutions to improve governance in emerging markets forum. And my dear colleague and friend Rajat Nag and I have spent 2 years writing that book, which will be released tomorrow. And of course, since the Ukraine war, the issue of food security and its interaction with climate change has been in the headlines. And we have a session tomorrow on the basis of a paper which JICA commissioned, and we'll be discussing that also. So we have a very rich agenda. But the basic themes, in addition to that I've just mentioned, cannot be completed if we're meeting on the African soil for the first time in the Global Forum. Will not be completed unless we discuss issues related to future development prospects of Africa. So we'll end our forum tomorrow by a deep discussion on Africa's development prospects. But instead of talking about everything about Africa, we're going to take a special perspective on how inequalities, which is, by the way, a global issue, which we discussed last year in Paris, but we'll take a special cut on how inequalities are affecting Africa's development prospects and what can be done about that. And the Policy Center took the lead in writing that paper, background paper, which you have access to, together with Jean-Louis Serby, a dear friend, a colleague from Emerging Markets Forum. And that particular session will be chaired by Mr. Kabruka, Dr. Kabruka, the former head of African Development Bank, a statesman, a very wise person, and he's kindly agreed to chair that particular session. And we'll be ending our forum in terms of substantive sessions with that particular discussion on Africa. So that's the basic structure of our forum, and we have very rich panels. In all, we have some 50 people. We may be overloading you with number of very wise people who will be on different panels, but we have overload of riches. But I think it will be very exciting for you to listen to these people and debate with them and talk to each other. So that's the basic structure of our forum for the next 2 days. We'll start, of course, with, in a sort of a light mood, Mr. Watanabe, our co-chair, who arrived late last evening, he will start with the discussion. He's a student of not only economics, but also history. And he'll make a short presentation of summarizing his perspective of where the world is today, politically and economically, with the help of some cartoons, so that we start on a light note. Let me stop here. Any questions that you may have, quickly, I'll be happy to answer. Otherwise, we'll invite Mr. Watanabe to join me in the podium, and he will share with us his view of where the world is today and where it's likely to go. Thank you very much, and welcome again.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We will now move to a dialogue session about the vision on world political and economic prospects. Joining Harinder Kohli, who will moderate this dialogue, please welcome Hiroshi Watanabe, President of the Institute for International Monetary Affairs, and Shigo Katsu, former President of Nazarbayev University. Harinder Kohli, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Watanabe-san, time is short, and we are here really to listen to you. I don't think it's necessary to introduce you, except that you are a co-chair. You've done so many things in Japan, in the world. But the basic thing is you are a co-chair, and we are here to listen to you. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Harinder. Oh, it's working, yes, thank you, great. Thank you, Harinder, and also the good morning for everyone to that. So it's my great pleasure to be here. And first of all, I have to say I have to express my deepest condolences to the people of Morocco for the recent disastrous casualty caused by the earthquake to that. And today I'm going to give you some presentation. Harinder said, you listen to me, but in reality that you look my cartoons, as you know that. So now I'm going to give you some idea what's going on, what do we have to face in the world at this moment to that. So I hope the cartoon would be shown on the screen, I hope. Okay. So today I'm going to speak about what we have to face the challenges, which is causing some trouble to the keeping the good supply chain in the world to that. So I have pointed the five one. On the left-hand side, upper side is just global warming. Recently, the Secretary General of the United Nations said it's boiling, not warming to that. And the left-hand side, the bottom is the Russians' activity in the Ukraine. And also the bottom of the right-hand side is we are going to have some of the COVID-19 affection to that and how to overcome to that. And also the the right-hand side is some confrontation between United States and China. And finally, we are going to see some more important issues for the financing for the world, the development to that. The recent inflation and which has made some impact for the high interest rate. It causes some trouble to that. Then you'll see what's going on by the cartoons to that. So actually, the inflation, last 50 years, at least in the developed economies, we didn't have any inflation to that. In case of Japan, we have the inflation in 1973, just 50 years ago. And most of the developed economies, they don't have very small number of the developing countries have the higher inflation, but it did not have the big impact for the world economy to that. A little bit slow. And the United States, I think the too much government spending to support the people has encouraged or accelerated the inflation. Now that Mr. Biden president is a big spender of the money, it has accelerated the inflation to that. And of course, the inflation gives a higher interest rate. it caused some kind of impact for the United States. But recently, the US found at least at this moment, the United States economy is not so much affected by the higher interest rate. So still they are going to keep the high interest rate for another 1 year or more. That is rather accepted even for the market people. And it causes some kind of trouble to that. In the very low interest rate period, money went out from the United States and going to the developing countries and emerging economies. But now the US offers a higher rate of interest. Now most of the money would come back to the United States. It causes some kind of a shortage of money in the developing economies and also the emerging economies to that. And also it causes some kind of the very strong United States dollars. Since the last year, the US dollar is rising their values for many magnitude to that. It has some negative impact for the other economies. Especially the Japanese yen is very much depreciated. Now the Bank of Japan is going to fight against on that, but there's still no way we didn't find they are going to expect in the coming at least half year to that. And also in the United States, early this year, they have some kind of the financial trouble to that. Money went out from the banks to that. It's kind of the bank run, but now the speed is very much accelerated by the media's information supply and also the AI, the treatment of the funding, the financing mechanisms to that. Only 2 days, more than 25% of the money went out from the Silicon Valley Bank. Such kind of accelerated pace is going to have another impact for the financial system to that. And another issue is the Russian invasion to the Ukraine. Still, we don't know how Mr. Putin has decided to go on to that. He's afraid of the NATO's expansion to the east, or they have to seek for another reconstructing on the Slavic, the ethnic people to that. And after the invasion, so most of the economy is going to have the sanction to the Russia, but also the Russia makes some sanction action to the Europe by the stopping the energy supply to that. It causes another reason for the inflation in the European economy to that. And still the war is continuing to that. And nobody knows when it's going to stop or when it is going to settle to that. It is another big concern for us to that. And also the stopping the export of the wheat from the Ukraine and Russia through the Black Sea is stopped. It causes some kind of negative impact to the African countries, the economy to that. There would be some kind of sign of the famine in the coming days. It would be kind of the terrorism for the food supply to that. And also such kind of the stopping the supply of the energy to the Europe is going to have some negative impact for the discussion of the global warming to that. The rapid response team is just standing on the snail. It's slowing to that. But the reality, we are going to have much more very speedy bad deterioration on the economy to that. So this is exactly, globe is boiled. This is what the Secretary General of the United Nations said to that. So we should take the real quick action to that. But it is very difficult to go on to that at this moment. To that. And also some confrontation between United States and also Russia, China. It has some negative impact for the free trade of the IT, the technologies, and also the IT supply to that. It will go down to somehow the slowing of the economic development in the coming days on that. And the China has its own difficulty to that. Some very bad performance on the real estate industry is going to have the negative impact for the banking sector and also the financing for the local government to that. It would reduce the growth rate of the China. And in addition to the China, they have another difficulty to that. They have the declining the population to that. In old days, one kid has 6 presents at his or her birthday. Father and the mother and the grandparents 4. They have to get the 6 presents. But now kids realize we have to take care of the 6th person in the future. That causes some kind of big negative impact for the Chinese economy to that. And most of the gloomy cases in the United States, in the next year, you will see such kind of the scene to that. One candidate on the wheel, one candidate would be arrested in somewhere. That is the reality we don't want to see to that, but we have to expect to that. And also the US, not only for the United States, even Japan and some European countries has accumulated so much debt to that. How to finance and how to pay back is really important. And also the emerging and also the developing economies, there will be some kind of the debt crisis. How to overcome and how to mitigate is quite important issues to that. And at the time of the COVID-19 affection, every government is going to make every effort to rescue the economy and the system and the society to that. But now they have to think about how to pay back such kind of big debt on that. That is quite important issue for us to that. And also during the COVID-19, according to the UK statistics, rich people has less infection and less death rate. Poor people has a more infection and more death rate to that. It causes some kind of the tension on the heightened discussion on the inequality in the future to that. So each democratic economies, we have to think about how to solve in such kind of the people's demand to that. And in order to keep a very good supply chain and also very good development of the emerging economy and the developing economy, even for the developed economies. But now the money is somewhat scarce. Short money is almost the abundant, like a flood to that. But the long-term money is somewhat scarce to that. The reason is that now the banking activity or the banking strength is getting worse and worse to that. Now the private bank is sustained by the central bank operation to that. So now we are going to have some kind of the limitation of the funding for the future to that. I believe these cartoons has shown you what we have to face current years to that. Thank you very much on that.
Watanabe-san, thank you very much. You've done exactly what we were hoping and even exceeding that. You weave together so many critical issues, climate change, economics, monetary issues, and politics. Normally our forum doesn't discuss politics, but at the end that's very critical. Geopolitics, domestic politics, including in the US. And use of visual images makes it very powerful. And I think you woke us up in the morning, which was necessary. So, Shigeo-san, would you help us launch a little bit of discussion on so many important and wise things that Watanabe-san has tabled for us? That's your job.
Thank you, Harinder-san. Good morning, and it's the first time, I think, in 3 years that I joined the Emerging Market Forum. So thank you very much for the invitation. But also, like Watanabe-san, I would like to extend really my condolences to the people of Morocco. And I hope that your reconstruction will proceed smoothly and in a manner which will help really the people who are most affected. Just listening to Watanabe-san's presentation, in a way, I must say I'm glad that I wasn't there yesterday afternoon for the first session. It seems that from what I hear, Mustafa also painted a pretty bleak picture of what the world has in store for us. So I'm asking myself, what am I actually doing here? I should maybe take the next flight out and try to save myself somewhere. I should ask maybe Mr. Elon Musk if he has a seat for me. Anyway, I think the key themes have been put on the table. And the question is, where do we find the way forward, the path forward? And obviously, one conclusion is that matters of the world, it goes back to global governance issues. And global governance is too important a matter to leave to superpowers, to be it the US, China, or Russia. What it calls for, it seems to me, is that collectively the other countries, nations, and increasingly also non-state actors have to really think about what is the common good for mankind. It means that the so-called middle power have to take the initiative and find different ways, variable architecture, not one formula, to think about how they can sort of pick up specific topics and act collectively on them and pressure the major powers who are all embroiled in their own dilemmas and tensions, most of them internal tensions, actually. I think the prioritization obviously is collectively climate change, and I look forward to a discussion on it. I think the description of the world boiling is indeed true there. September has been the hottest month on record ever. I think the savings, the headroom for 1.5 degrees almost exhausted. And against that, given the current conflicts, I'm not so sure what we can actually expect from COP28. But let's have a great discussion on that later. I think number two, I would say, is the whole issue of inequality globally and as well as regionally. I think it has so much to do a lot with sort of the collective amnesia that we all fall into. I think the most recent example of collective amnesia is probably, I'm not the only person who looks back at the COVID pandemic, the last 2-3 years, and the memory of what happened is actually quite fuzzy. It's as if those 2-3 years haven't happened, almost. And we try to pick up the pieces as if we could go on from the pre-COVID era. But in reality, I think it sort of more reflects the common sort of human, the way that we are organized, that bad things we try to forget early. It goes beyond COVID. Nobody thinks about, or increasingly less about, the next pandemic, which will be around the corner. But also, even on a bigger scale, to me also, I don't know whether it's big or not, collectively, the memories of the Second World War are also fading. They're fading with the generation that is disappearing. And combined with emergence of video games, violence that is increasingly synthetic. The natural barriers that would hold mankind back of committing incredible acts of crime, violence, that barrier also is about to disappear. And we see it, be it in Ukraine, the threat in East Asia, Southeast Asia, US, unfortunately, Congress is thinking as to how to use violence against other states, etc., etc. So I think we need to, again, call upon the middle states, middle powers, to try to inject a sense of rationale and better sense. Let me finish at this point here because I have some other comments, but I hope that it raises some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Shigeo. Thank you. And welcome back after 3 years break, and I hope we'll see you.
Remember anything.
Yeah, but welcome back. At least pandemic is over, and I think you're more free now. So hopefully we'll see you again more regularly. Watanabe-san, we have now 6 minutes left before our session ends. So let me ask you this. After your very complete picture of the world and the challenges that the world faces, maybe we can spend the rest of the time looking at some positive aspects. Your country, Japan, though you were a global statesman, and particularly your time when you were the Sherpa of G7 on behalf of, and G20 on behalf of Japan, you were a global statesman. Japan has been, for a long time, a leader in technologies, and still is. And many people believe that some of the issues that you have tabled, including climate change, and the solutions, including aging, where Japan is seen by many as an example how, even though population demographics are a huge issue for Japan, but in terms of treating old people, Japan is setting an example how to adjust to an aging population. But Japan is also developing technologies in healthcare, in areas of climate change. What positive signs do you see in tackling some of the issues that you mentioned, and things that are happening in Japan, which could provide solutions for emerging markets as a whole?
Well, thank you, Harinder. So always you gave me very difficult question to answer to that. But anyway, Japan has been working very hard on the issues, on the demographic issues to that. And always we have the decreasing the working people to that. And also once we have the compensate such kind of reduction of the labors, we have to invite the women and also the aged people to work more to that. And that can be also the good example for the other country to that. But I think such kind of the temporary compensation doesn't work for a long time to that. So we have to prepare for how the people can work very steadily to that. In that sense, I think the very heavy duty work, you cannot work at the age of 75 and 80 to that. But I think the division of the labor is going to work to that. So the aged people or less mighty people is going to work on the very soft issue, soft power, soft work to that. And we have to distinguish the work to go on the coming days to that. And also last maybe 30, 40 years, all the world is working for the more development, or more income, and more production to that. But now we are facing for the environmental issues and also the global warming and boiling to that. So we have to have the more emphasis how to save the consumption to that. The less consumption also can give the good the impact for the human society to that. Such kind of the method should be more sought in the coming day to that. But still the many people, including Japan or the other country, is sticking to the higher rate of the development and the rate of growth to that. So such kind of change of the mind is quite important that. So the reality, still some politician in the Japanese government and also the Japanese diet is working for the more growth for Japan to that. But I think now the majority and also the recently the administration is thinking to how to make the save the energy and the less consumption could give us a better life for the future to that. And also even the developed economy said in that way to that. I believe the emerging economy and the developing economy should say, we have to grow before we are going to have the saving of the energy to that. So we have to communicate the developed economies and also the others, how we can make some equilibrium in the future to that. Such kind of discussion should be sought in the coming years to that. In that sense, I think the new administration is starting to work in that direction to that. And also we are going to have some more good discussion among the many the group of the people. In the old days, very old days, at the time of the United States and the Soviet Union, it's kind of the two power confrontation. And also last 10 years, we discussed on the China-US confrontation to that. But now the discussion is much more diversified to that. So the last the G20 meeting, India has proposed issues to that. But I don't think the US, China, India, three countries going to they dominate in the future to that. So as the Shigeo-san said, we are going to discuss on how discussion would be diversified or maybe multiplied, including the middle size of the country and also some good voice-raising country. That is quite important. That in that way we have to go on to that. And also I realized many people said the good vision and deliver the good words to that. But most important words is how definitely we are going to take step. Such kind of the step would be shown. That is quite important. That I think that would be realizing the future as the happiest for the time for us to that. That's my answer to you, first of all.
Thank you very much. Very thoughtful, as always. I'm told we have a few more minutes time, which is a bonus. So let me ask a follow-up question. The big issue on everybody's mind is your neighboring country, China. We had a little bit of discussion yesterday about the Chinese economy. We had insights from the chief economist of Asia Infrastructure Bank. What are your views about the Chinese economy, medium to long term? It'll be fascinating to get your views about it. Of course, we got AIB's perspective on the, if you would, depressing impact of the decline in Chinese population and the immediate crisis of the housing industry, construction industry, but also medium-term impact of decline in Chinese population and construction sector. But how do you see the Chinese economy?
Okay. I think in the long run, China can survive to that. But in the coming 3 or 5 years, they have to face a very difficult situation to that. And the cartoon says, and also the Harinder says, the shrinking the operation of the real estate industry and the construction industry is going to have a very negative impact for that. The first one is, of course, the many local bank has the finance such kind of operation, so they have the non-performing loan issues. That will be very much the facing in the coming 1 or 2 years to that. So I think that's the reason why they have to change the governor of the People's Bank of China. And also such kind of the contraction of the real estate industry is going to have the negative impact for the revenue of the local government. In case of China, it's a very unique position to that. Most of the tax revenue goes to the central government. But in the case of the local government, just rely on the financing related to the transaction of the real estate to that. As far as the operation of the real estate is going to stop, that means the shrinking of the revenue for the local government to that. It would have two negative impacts. First one is, as the central economy, the system of the China, most of the project is carried by the initiative of the central government for the national project, or the local government for the local project to that. But the local project, the local government doesn't have any money to go on to that. So I think the project operation on the local side is very much shrinking to that. It is having a negative impact for that. Just after the 2008 great financial crisis, China made a very big economic impact to that. At the time, it was carried by the local government operation to that. But now they don't have any more money to that. So I think the total project operation is going to shrink. That is one negative impact. The second one is, maybe you don't understand the situation. In the case of China, pension system is carried by each local government. Most of the country, that would be carried by just one single government. The central government is going to take care of the issues to that. So I think in the case of China, each pension system is supported by the local government. They have nearly 35 local government in China. Already 5 or 6 local government doesn't have any this fund for the pension fund. That means each year the working people has to transfer the money to the aged people to that. And according to the survey done by the Chinese government, by the 2035, all the local government is going to lose the funding for the pension fund. So from now, after that time, all the pension system is going to have pay as you go from the working generation to the aged people to that. That is very much difficult situation. So I think from now on, I recommend it to the Chinese government. You have to make more good financing for the local government. So you have to share the revenue issues for the individual income tax and for the corporation income tax, even for the barrier tax, would be shared by the central government, the local government. Would have very fair the operation of the China to that. And also in the case of China, they don't have any taxation for the real estate holding to that. Just they tax or they raise the money from the real estate transaction. But the holding for the real estate is quite important to that. It should be very, very much important for the revenue, the rescue for the Chinese government issues to that. So, but still China is also affected by the growing and the gross belief operation to that. So even the China is going to change such kind of the mind to that. Keeping some moderate growth is quite important for the long-term operation to that. since the 2000 and 2013 and 18, so they have some very high rate of growth, more than 10% of that. But now the growth rate is getting less and less and less. So last year they claimed more than 3%, but I don't believe the 3% was accomplished to that. And also this year they claim we're going to grow by 4.5 to that, but I still wonder if they are going to achieve such kind of high operation to that. So they have to see the reality of the economy, and they have to adjust the policy to such kind of the sustainable growth rate. That is quite important issues. And also, I have the very good confidence for the Chinese, the government official people to that. Still, they understand what is really going on to that. But some of the political bias is going to dampen such kind of operation to that. So this is not easy for the Chinese to change the total system to that. But I think still I have the good confidence and the good relation to the government official to that. So we have to communicate, not only myself, but as you have the good friend of the China. You have to communicate what kind of the issues would solve the issue, the difficulty to that. Such kind of the communication and the support for the China is quite important for the coming here. Anyway, they have now already the second largest GDP country to that, and also the second largest population country in the world to that. We cannot neglect them to that. They can keep the very good state of the condition. That is quite important for the entire world to that. We have to make some more the good cooperation to support China in the future. That is quite important. So as a neighbor country with Japan, with some of the coordination with the South Korea, we are going to make some input for that. And also in the Asia, ASEAN 10 countries also has a good point, have some division of labor with necessity keeping the supply chain to that. So we do not too much stick to the decoupling or de-risking to that. But anyway, we have to keep some good cooperation with China. It's quite important for the coming future to that. But also we have to tell the China what you should change in the coming years. So such kind of the very good and honest discussion to be important for the entire world.
Thank you very much, Watanabe-san. I think we are at the coffee break time, but I'll take one question if somebody would like to ask a question to Mr. Watanabe-san, and then we'll go for coffee break. Anybody wants to raise a question? Suma, please.
Thank you very much. And as always, listening to Watanabe-san and Katsu-san, it's a real pleasure, actually. And I enjoyed your cartoons as ever. I remember many of our meetings over those cartoons. I think there are 2 points. I thought you spelled out all the challenges, both of you, that are coming up. But there are 2, I think, that I'd like to bring out, and maybe pointers for next year's session in Tokyo we can think about. One is about really, I guess I'd call it intergenerational transfer of wealth and assets from our generation to a younger generation who may not share our values and actually have different views and different hierarchy of priorities as well. And I think that throws up quite a big set of policy issues for us to think through. The second thing I think both of you touched on is the rising power of the state compared with when we were growing up, partly the COVID situation. The state is back in terms of dominating how we behave and how our ability to actually function as individuals in a way, and I think some state actors have got rather used to that, and I think we can see that in other areas too. And also in terms of just economic policy, whether it's the Inflation Reduction Act in the US, industrial strategies everywhere now, a rise of sort of protectionist behavior, deglobalization leading to that. I think that's also quite a big change and a big fissure, I think, in the way we're thinking about economic policy. I think 2 other points that might be worth debating as well in the Emerging Markets Forum going forward.
Thank you very much. as always, you gave me the very good question and hard question to answer to that. And I think the inequality or income redistribution or asset redistribution in each domestic economy is quite important to that. So I think in case of Japan, very luckily, it was said all the people have more than 75% of the total the individual asset to that. So now we are working on how to share the older people's the wealth to the younger generation to that. Such kind of the mechanism has been taken, including some of the tax measures to that. That is quite important to that. Of course, we have to make the direct taxation for the older people's holding of the asset, but it is not so wise to that. So I think that money would be transferred to the younger generation, and the younger generation is going to spend to that. So that could sustain some economy to that. In that direction, now we are working to that. Of course, the many resistance is coming to that, so it's not easy to that. But anyway, how to share the existing asset to the or entire the population is quite important to that. So I think that is one of the way for the income redistribution or asset redistribution to keep the inequality of the people to that. That is quite important to that. And also the last question you made on that, so the currently U.S. economy is very good to that, and maybe only one country can enjoy such kind of good economic performance to that. But also now the U.S. is going to think not only for the Mr. Trump, but many Americans is going to think about U.S. people would be better. We don't care any other country to that. That is the very bad the current situation for the world to that. So how to make the U.S. people to think about the real good transaction and the real good trade among the world, including the United States, is very much important for the U.S. people to have a better life to that. So such kind of discussion is not done at this moment because the other countries are rather losing some kind of the power to make the voices to that. But I think the U.S. is not keeping the unique position to have the only one flourishing country. But I think the U.S. is going to have some kind of difficulty. In that case, I think the other country is going to have the more good voices for the U.S. to make more active relation to the other country to that. Not on the military cases, but also the trade and somehow the intellectual interaction would be encouraged by the people. In that way, we have to work on to that. Sometimes we must too much focus on the money and asset and the consumption to that. But I think keeping the better world to that, we have to have the more better intellectual communication with the big countries, medium country, and the small country to that. That is quite important. And such kind of the voices should be communicated to the U.S. people. That is quite important to that. Thank you.
Suma, on your last point, the role of the state and rethinking about that, recent, if you would, movement since the pandemic and what we should do in next year's forum about it. I have, just to share our thinking on that, I have initiated a little bit of dialogue on that issue with Intermit Gill. You missed the session yesterday evening thanks to the airline snafu. You'll see him in action in the next session. He's chairing the session on climate change financing. You know, he's the chief economist of the World Bank now, you know him well. I'm urging him that the World Bank should revisit the Washington Consensus formally, though they did make an attempt 4 years ago, as you know, and it didn't go too far. But I've asked him to make a formal attempt to rethink where the world is today in terms of relative roles of the state and private sector. He intellectually accepts that the pendulum had gone too far, but he's struggling whether the bank can formally restate that thing. But I think he will come to our next forum in Japan. And maybe we can have a collaboration with him personally, but maybe with the World Bank formally or informally, to have a debate on that issue. I'm not sure if there is a need for a formal acknowledgement of industrial policy. Maybe Inflation Reduction Act has gone too far. But there is no question that the state has a greater role than where Larry Summers took the US. There was too much deregulation, and now the Americans are paying a price for that. American consumers, that is. So thank you for raising that issue. We will discuss together that issue. What should be our agenda at the next forum? But there's no question that we need to do that. Hassan Toleh, who's here, and I've been talking also about how would we reach the net zero targets, and what's the role of the private sector. And I don't think it's just the issue of trillions of dollars of new money being available to MDBs, which is the session that we'll be having a discussion on in MDBs reform. It's a question of how, and Hassan will be talking about that. It's a question of where are the projects? How would the private sector come in different countries? So it all comes together, role of the state. So thank you for raising that issue. Thank you very much, Mr. Watanabe.
Thank you.
Watanabe-san. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for taking his non-stop flight and being awake this morning.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now take a 15-minute coffee break in the foyer of this building. We will reconvene in this auditorium at 10 a.m. sharp. If you are leaving the building, please make sure to return your translation headsets at the registration desk.